As usual, what is going on, everybody? All right, I know it has been a while since I put a video up about working on the old motorized bicycles. For those of you who are new and just stopped by, this is your first video. Welcome to the page. My personal page just focuses on stock bicycles. So if you're looking for a video of putting a camshaft, big carburetor, and all that race stuff on a four-stroke bike, this is not the video for you. I focus mainly on stock bikes that people are going to put together themselves and or buy that need reliable transportation and are not trying to get 90 miles an hour out of their motorized bike. So, having said that, if you've followed my page for months and months now, I built this bike in the springtime of 2022, which is basically this year. The only maintenance I have done to it since initially rolling it out the door was the oil change. That was a few videos back. That was the only annoying thing I've found about this bike is the oil change, because the plug is right there and you got to loosen the motor about 1/4 of an inch. I personally used a chisel and stuck it under there and tilted the motor up a little bit, and give me enough room to get the oil drain plug out and change my oil, and I haven't had to change it since. Probably getting due, but that's not what today's video is about. Probably will get that done before winter, because I always winterize my bikes. Put a little seafoam in the fuel mix. You can do that with 2-cycle bikes also. That way when it starts getting that hot and cold fall weather, it doesn't get condensation in the tank for when the weather completely flips to cold, and then I have moisture in my fuel. But once again, that's for another future video. As you've always seen me speak about, and I kept pushing the issue because it's an important issue, about the 4-stroke bike setup. They come with a centrifugal clutch, or centrifugal, however you want to pronounce it. I don't want the world beating me up on the mispronunciation of the clutch. But anyway, that is the style of clutch these bikes have. I wanted to see exactly how wear and tear is right out of the box without any upgrades. This particular bike hasn't given me any problems with the clutch. Now, if you're going to be new to the 4-stroke bikes, the clutches are a little chattery, a little jumpy when they're first brand new, because the shoes have to wear into the clutch bell, which I will show you as we are disassembling this to give it a look-see and see how it's wearing and how things are going in there. But anyway, I have had people tell me that they've had instant problems and the clutch let them down, or it didn't make it a couple weeks or whatever. I personally have learned in the past to find out for yourself. You don't know how hard the people were on equipment. For some reason in the world, nobody really admits they went out and thrashed something, but they'll 100% admit that, well, it just fell apart. But they didn't tell you that they wide opened the throttle every time they took off and yanked and jerked and whatever the clutch to death, and that's what made it malfunction. I will admit these bikes are a little delicate in the clutch department, and what I say by that is they do not like being full throttled right from the get. Yes, you can pedal and get your weight moving. That is a given. That is a necessity with the 2 strokes and the 4 strokes to keep your clutch pads alive. But if you roll into the throttle instead of just gassing it to death, you just ease into it as you get moving, speed picks up, you just roll into it a little bit. They function just fine. That's how they're designed to work. But if you're a person that thinks that it's a motorcycle, you give it a couple pedals and you crank the throttle and the bike gets all jumpy and jerky and whatnot, that means you're going a little too hard on the throttle. Back the throttle up a little bit to where it's not so jumpy and catchy. I don't really know how to explain that, but if you have one of these or have ridden one, you understand what I'm saying. And just let it gradually pick up speed. It is not a motorcycle. They are motorized bicycles. Okay, I'm not here to give a speech about that, but I just want people to know. That way you give the bicycle a fair shake on the, I don't know, longevity, quality, or whatnot. Don't just hop on it, think it's a mini bike with an 8-horse Briggs motor on it, and you get out there and wonder how come it's not taking off and spinning the wheels and doing 50 miles an hour right out of the gate. Okay, so what we're going to do is pull the whole conveyor box assembly off this bad fella and take a look at that clutch right inside there. See what kind of wear we're getting. So I will start by, and I will show everyone, I personally, it's just easier. If you see here, I took a marker and marked my chain tensioner, which I will probably move up a little bit because now that I have some miles on it, my chain has a little extra slack. So we'll handle that accordingly when we finish. But I'm going to release my idler pulley so I get some slack, take my chain off of the gear drive right there, and remove this here gearbox clutch assembly. So, enough talk, let's see what it looks like. Alrighty, first thing first, loosening of the chain tensioner so I can get a little slack and hopefully walk my chain right off the pulley of the drive gear. Alright, so far so good. Let me scoot the camera to the side here a little bit so we get a little working room and hopefully no shadow in there. Take our trusty 10mm socket. Remove these bolts. Let me scoot this light over so hopefully we get a little better view and not a shadow. And there is our assembly. And looking pretty good so far. Not a massive amount of clutch dust. The more clutch dust you have, the more you know that it is wearing and you're slipping it too much. So far so good. All right, our clutch pads are still pretty good shape. Not misshapen or wore more in one spot than another. They seem to be wearing pretty evenly. Like I said, there's not a mass amount of dust in there. There's nothing to lubricate in here because when you apply the throttle, how these work is they come out like that. Grab the inside of the bell of the clutch. They spread out, grab that, and that is what propels you down the road. When you get on the throttle heavily, it's trying to grip and slip, and that's what's doing all the bucking and jerking. So if you roll into the throttle, as I explained earlier, it gives it a smoother transition, I guess, and propels you down the road. We're going to pull our gearbox apart here in a moment and see how things are doing in there. But right now it seems smooth and problem-free, and the bike is riding problem-free. So let's move on to pulling the gearbox apart and seeing what we got in there. Pardon my impromptu table. My regular table is being used for something else. Motorized bikes is just a, I don't know, side business, if you will. Our main business is welding and custom exhaust and regular exhaust and what have you. But that's not what this video is about. But this table will get us through. So we're going to remove these 4 screws here. So we can see what's happening inside of our gearbox. Make sure everything's lubed properly while we're at it. Because I do plan on going for a ride here in the next couple of days. And I am big on a trouble-free ride. I don't want to own something that I have to maintenance every time I go for a ride. But I don't have a problem maintaining something, so I don't have a problem when I go for a ride. All right, our chain is lubed. Our bearings are still doing good, nice and smooth. Check that guy out. If you turn them and you feel roughness, or it drags or is hard to turn, that's the time to replace that bearing. That's it letting you know that it's time to replace that bearing. But lucky for me, these seem to be doing just fine. Still nice and smooth and free. And will leave well enough alone. My chain is thoroughly greased. I see that a lot of it has been slung on the case. So, while I'm here, let's recoat that bad fella with the grease they've already given us. With our trusty little screwdriver. Turn that a little bit. Give it a nice recoating. As you can see, the grease stretching, so it's well lubricated. Both sprockets are not running dry and grease free. No shavings or anything in there, so that tells me that everything's working just fine. So I am personally going to keep running this bad fella, because I want to see exactly how long, how many miles, how much time before, when, and if it ever wears out. And parts do wear out. I'm not saying they don't. Nothing lasts forever, unfortunately. But so far, so good with this. So we're going to leave well enough alone. Put our case back together. Everything went back together smooth. Run our bolts back in there. And I'll finish tightening them up. Wipe all my nasty greasy fingerprints off there. I will, after I do that, make sure my nut's tight on my gear. Also check my nut on my clutch bell housing right there. Make sure I didn't get any greasy fingerprints in there. You can't have any grease. You want your clutch pads to be dry. No oil on them whatsoever. That's what makes them slip, prematurely wear, and or not pull the way they're supposed to pull you down the road. All right, so give me a moment. Get this back together and cleaned up, and we'll get it back on the bike. Before I remount the gearbox can't get that out. Before I mount the gearbox back on, while I was off camera earlier and I was doing the gearbox to allow it a few moments to dry, I did take a little brake cleaner. Doesn't matter what brand you use, this is just what I used. I don't use carburetor cleaner on anything because it has a lot of acidic properties that sometimes don't react well with your rubber O-rings, gaskets, seals, and maybe even the clutch pads. But it does work really well to clean the clutch dust out of there, because I'd like to start from scratch, if you will, like it was new. I saw how much wear and tear I've had on it. I have put a lot of summer miles on it. I don't have an exact number because I didn't keep track on this one. I just basically went with time. If you've seen all the videos of me riding it, it has been all summer long under normal conditions, which I refer to as normal conditions. Just normal riding, not out flying and doing 90 miles an hour or anything. And everything has worked flawlessly. But this way I want you to get a good view of your clutch pads. Well, in this one, it's more of shoes. You don't want any oil residue whatsoever in here. I checked that nut just to make sure it's tight, being I'm here. Everything looks 100%. So let's get it back together. All right, lastly, I have wiped that out to make sure it has no oil residue. I know I keep saying that, but it is massively important. Check the torque on that nut. Checked on my drive gear nut. Make sure everything is happy in the way it should be. And now we will reinstall it. It has a little recessed lip that it sits in. Naturally, as I'm going for the bolt, the washers come off, but that's okay. One long bolt goes in there. Let's get one in there so it'll quit trying to fall on the ground on me. Short bolt in the front. Get the washers back on my long bolt for the bottom. I like to start them finger tight. All this is aluminum. It's not the highest grade in the world, so it will be really easy to strip. And when I tighten these 4 bolts, I just want them tight. I don't have to use a 1/2 inch size ratchet or anything. They're not lug studs on a car wheel, that is. They just have to be tight. Make sure it's in its little recessed lip that is inside the engine case there. Tighten these 4 up, and it should be good to go. There you have it. The gearbox clutch assembly is reinstalled. All the bolts are tight. You don't have to super tighten them. Like I said, it is an all aluminum housing stuff, so they just need to be a little past snug, and they'll do just fine. Got all my nasty greasy fingerprints off there because I can't stand that. Got my chain put back on my drive gear right there. And this chain was brand new, and as you can see my little marks, I had to move my chain up a little bit. Every brand new chain stretches / relaxes after being ridden a little bit. So anybody that is building a new bike after a tank full of gas, it is always a good idea to check the tension on your chain, because it is usually loosened up a little bit just from breaking in. Nothing else other than that, but you can see my marks, and that is how far I had to move her up. and back up so you can see it. And now my chain is tight, but not too tight. You don't want it tight like a guitar string. You want a little slack in it, but not a whole lot. That way it's not flopping around like a limp noodle. All right, well, I will have to admit that I am quite impressed with the wear on that stock setup. I expected a lot more wear and clutch dust in there, but that was not bad at all, especially for a pretty much an entire season of riding so far. It's still good shape, so we're going to keep on riding her until, I don't know, it really needs some repairs or whatnot. So if you're thinking of building or riding or need to take a look at your clutch setup on your 4-cycle bike, that's what it looks like in this particular brand. What brand is this? Because they have a Hosh tag, if I pronounce that correctly. I am running this Anvil, and it hasn't let me down. Fires up every time. Works like it had oughta. I am quite impressed with it. I haven't had any problems since I've rolled it out of the shop, and gonna get a little more riding in it this weekend. All right, well, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I appreciate it, and it does help out the channel. That way others that may be having a problem could see something in this video that would help them get riding, because that's what it's all about, is trying to help people out, not trying to one-up anybody. Just want to show people the normal maintenance, get a little understanding of the mechanics of the bikes for those who don't know or just getting new to the mechanical world. Nobody's born knowing this stuff. So hopefully Saturday I can do a little video. We're going to ride down to the Route 66 car show. It's kind of an international event here in fine Illinois downtown. And if you're so inclined, check out our video that we're going to be in, a car parade that starts the car show. I don't personally go down there and sit all day myself. Done that for years. But we will probably make a fun little video of tonight's parade, if I don't get rained on or cloudy, frozen out. Because don't you know, it's been 90 degrees up until today. Now it's raining and dropped down to 50. And my personal car has no roof, heater, windows, all that good stuff. All right, well, thanks for watching. Hope you get to catch the car video, and I will see you in the future on our next trusty bike video.